I'm not some damn cow to be sold off, she snapped, not breaking eye contact with Jackson. Tell me this is a joke. You have 24 hours, Jackson added. Say yes, and your father keeps the farm. Say no. He turned, glancing out at the dry fields. I'll bring the bulldozers by morning. The car door slammed shut, the engine roared, and he was gone. Her father sank into the porch swing, quietly sobbing, and Emily didn't comfort him. Welcome to Love Above All, Passion and Power Stories. Before we begin this story, I want to propose a challenge. If you enjoy the first few minutes, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. She was sold to a ruthless billionaire, but never expected to fall for the man who vowed to control her. Between contracts, secrets, and forbidden kisses, a battle of wills turns into a dangerous love. But how far is she willing to go to tame the devil who now bears her last name? Ready to begin? Let's go. The sound of boots against dry earth echoed through the dying fields of Carter Farm. Emily stood at the porch, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, wind tugging at her long chestnut hair. She had known this day would come. She just hadn't expected him to be so imposing. Jackson Steele stepped out of the black SUV like he owned the land. Hell, maybe he did. With that suit clinging to his tall, muscular frame, and those sharp grey eyes that looked like they could slice through steel, he wasn't a man. He was a verdict. Emily Carter. His voice was smooth, deep, dangerous. She raised her chin, her voice firm despite the storm inside her. Depends on who's asking. His lips twisted in the smallest mockery of a smile. I'm here to collect a debt. Her stomach tightened. Behind her the screen door creaked. Her father stepped out, weathered hands trembling, eyes bloodshot from another sleepless night. Emily, please, just listen to him. I'm not a damn cow to be sold off, she snapped, not taking her eyes off Jackson. Tell me this is a joke. It's not, Jackson said, stepping closer. Your father borrowed $500,000 from me. Collateral was the land. He defaulted. But I'm a reasonable man. Instead of seizing the farm, I'm offering an alternative arrangement. Her heart slammed against her ribs. What kind of arrangement? He looked her over, not lecherously, but like he was evaluating a possession. You, as my wife, for 1 year. The silence roared between them. The wind died. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. You're out of your mind, she whispered, her voice breaking. Her father dropped to his knees, grabbing her hand. Em, please. If we lose this farm, we lose everything. Your mother's memory, your brother's grave, all of it. You should have thought of that before gambling our lives away, she hissed, jerking her hand back. Jackson stepped between them. Let's be clear. I don't need your love. I don't even need your obedience, not entirely. What I need is control, and having you by my side serves my interests. What interests? She demanded. Business, he said, with the cold confidence of a man used to getting everything he wanted. The Steele name carries weight. A respectable marriage keeps the vultures at bay, and you, Emily Carter, are the perfect pawn. Pawn? She spat. You arrogant bastard. He smiled, a slow, wicked thing. You'll find I'm much worse than that. Her breath caught in her throat. You have 24 hours, Jackson added. Say yes, and your father keeps the farm. Say no. He turned, glancing out at the dry fields. I bring bulldozers by morning. Emily stared at him, fury and fear warring in her eyes. She was proud. She had dreams, a scholarship to UT Austin that she hadn't dared to use, a life she wanted to build far away from the weight of Carter Farm. And now this man was offering to burn it all down, or chain her to him in exchange for salvation. Jackson headed back to his SUV without looking back. 1 year. My house, my rules, and if you run, I will find you. The car door slammed, and with a roar of the engine he was gone. Her father sank into the porch swing, sobbing quietly. Emily didn't comfort him. She walked inside, numb. Every step echoed like a decision. Her fingers brushed against the faded family photos on the wall. She touched her mother's locket, still hanging by the mirror. She should have screamed, should have fought. But there was something in Jackson's eyes, that flicker of darkness mixed with heat, that terrified her more than the deal itself. That night, she lay awake in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of her future pressing down like a stone on her chest. And by morning, when the sun broke over the fields, Emily Carter had made her choice. She was going to marry the devil, not because she had to, but because she needed to learn what made a man like Jackson Steele so dangerously powerful, and how to survive him. The ring was heavy on her finger, too tight, too cold, too real. Emily sat in the back of Jackson Steele's limousine, her eyes fixed on the Texas highway rushing by, but her mind was trapped in the silence of the vows she hadn't wanted to say. He hadn't even kissed her at the courthouse. Instead, he had signed the papers with a pen engraved with his initials, handed her a diamond that probably cost more than her entire town, and told her to pack her bags. Now, she was his wife. On paper. Nothing about it felt real, except for the way her pulse jumped every time she glanced at him across the seat. Jackson didn't look at her. He typed something on his phone, perfectly composed, legs crossed, jaw tight, always in control. Even now, freshly married, he didn't so much as acknowledge her presence. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My Dallas residence," he said, without glancing up. "You'll be living there from now on." She scoffed. "You mean your mansion?" "Estate," he corrected, his tone clipped. "You'll find I don't care for exaggeration." She turned to him, jaw clenched. "This whole situation is an exaggeration, a circus. Do you always buy your brides like cattle?" That got his attention. Slowly he lowered the phone and met her glare. "No, I don't buy anyone," he said, voice low and sharp. "But I do make investments. You, Emily, are one of them." She bristled. "I'm not your asset. Yet here you are, wearing my ring, sitting in my car." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a quiet threat. "I offered you a way out. You said yes. I said yes to save my home, not to become your puppet." He chuckled, but it wasn't warm. It was cruel. "You'll find I don't pull strings, Emily. I hold chains." Her heart skipped. There was something about him, the way he spoke like he owned the air, the way his eyes burned when he was angry. It scared her. It thrilled her. She hated that. When they arrived, the gates opened silently. The Steele estate was a sprawling modern fortress of glass and stone on the edge of Dallas, surrounded by manicured lawns and guarded like a bank. As the limo came to a stop, Jackson stepped out first, then extended a hand. Emily hesitated, then placed her palm in his. His fingers closed around hers, strong, commanding. Her skin tingled at the contact. She hated how easily her body responded to his touch. "Welcome home," he said. The house was breathtaking, cold, pristine, designed like it was meant to impress, not comfort. She followed him through the halls, her boots echoing against marble. "You'll have your own room," he said, leading her up a staircase. "I won't touch you unless you ask me to." She stopped walking. "What makes you think I'd ever ask?" He turned to her, his gaze unflinching. "Because you're curious. I saw it the moment we met. You want to know what it would feel like, to surrender, to burn." Her breath caught. His words coiled around her like smoke. "You're wrong," she said, though her voice trembled. He smiled like he could see through her. They reached the guest wing. Her room was massive, all white and silver, like something out of a magazine. He opened the door and handed her a key card. "This is your space. No one enters without your permission, not even me." She narrowed her eyes. "Why the boundaries?" "Because control is everything," he said. "For both of us." She stepped inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Alone, Emily stood in the middle of the luxurious room, heart racing. She was safe, technically, but something told her this house was a kind of prison, the kind you don't even realize you're in until it's too late, and Jackson Steele was the warden. But she wasn't a girl who broke easily. If he thought she'd fall at his feet, he was wrong. This wasn't just about saving her home anymore. This was about proving that even the devil could bleed. Emily hadn't unpacked. She didn't need to. This wasn't her home, and she refused to pretend it was. Instead, she sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the Texas sunset smear gold across the horizon. For a moment it was quiet, peaceful. Then a knock. Before she could respond, the door creaked open, and a woman in a crisp black uniform stepped in. "Mr. Steele asked me to inform you that dinner is served," the maid said with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Formal attire is expected. There's a dress in your closet." Emily stood slowly. Of course there is. She wanted to wear jeans. She wanted to storm into his perfect dining room and remind him that she didn't belong in his world. But something in her twisted at the idea of letting him see her flinch. So she opened the closet and froze. The dress was deep red, silk, bare-backed, expensive enough to pay off a year's rent. She ran her fingers over the fabric, her pulse spiking. This wasn't a dinner invitation, it was a game, and the dress was his first move. She wore it anyway. The dining room was massive, draped in shadows and gold fixtures. A single long table stretched across the room, set with fine china and flickering candles. Jackson was already seated at the head, swirling a glass of wine, expression unreadable. When he looked up and saw her, something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, not approval, but something darker, hungrier. "You clean up well," he said simply. Emily walked toward the seat across from him, heels echoing on polished marble. "You're not the first man who's tried to dress me up like a trophy." He took a sip of wine. "But I might be the last." She sat without responding, reaching for her glass. The red wine smelled expensive and dangerous. "Do you enjoy this?" she asked. "Playing God." Jackson's eyes met hers. "I enjoy control, not chaos." "And I'm chaos? You're unpredictable." He cut into his steak, movements precise. "I don't like unpredictability, but I admire fire. It's rare." She held his gaze. "You think I'm going to break?" "I think," he said calmly, "you'll choose not to." That silenced her more than any insult could have. Dinner was served by silent staff, course after course of food too beautiful to eat. Emily pushed hers around the plate, appetite crushed by tension. "Why me?" she finally asked, voice quieter now. "Why not some socialite with a family name and no soul?" "Because I need someone with nothing to lose," he replied simply. "Someone who won't ask questions, someone who will stay invisible when I need her to be, and dangerous when I say so." Her jaw clenched. "So you married me because I'm disposable?" "No," he said, "because you're useful and angry." Emily looked down at her hands. He was right. She was angry at her father, at herself, at this entire twisted situation. But more than that, she was confused about Jackson, about the heat in his voice when he said fire, about the way her skin reacted every time he looked at her. He stood suddenly, chair scraping back. "Come," he ordered. She blinked. "Excuse me? I want to show you something." Her instinct was to say no, but curiosity whispered louder. She followed him through the dark halls of the estate until they reached a locked steel door. He pressed his thumb to a scanner. The door hissed open. Inside was a private study, dim, warm, and filled with old books and crystal decanters. On the wall behind the desk, a single photograph hung in a black frame, a woman, beautiful, smiling, and unmistakably dead behind the eyes. "Your ex?" Emily asked. her voice dry. Jackson didn't answer immediately. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. "She was my fiancée," he said. "Years ago, she overdosed. My father paid everyone off, said scandal would ruin the Steele name." Emily looked at the photo again. There was a crack in it, a fracture running straight through the woman's heart. "I thought you didn't believe in love," she whispered. "I don't," he said, "but I believe in weakness, and I never make the same mistake twice." They stood there, inches apart. The tension was unbearable. She could smell his cologne, dark, smoky, laced with temptation. He leaned in, not touching her, just close enough for her breath to catch. "One rule, Emily," he murmured. "Don't lie to me. I'll always know." And with that he turned and walked out, leaving her alone in the room, surrounded by ghosts, holding a drink she couldn't taste, and with a fire inside her she no longer knew how to put out. Emily didn't sleep. She sat in the velvet chair of the private study long after Jackson left, staring at the cracked photo of the woman whose ghost still lingered in every corner of the estate. Something about her eyes haunted Emily. Not the sadness in them, but the resignation. It was the look of someone who had stopped fighting, and Emily swore she'd never wear that expression. By morning, she was dressed and waiting in the grand hallway when Jackson emerged from the East Wing, perfectly tailored in a navy suit, as if emotions were something he ironed out along with his shirts. "Planning an escape?" he asked, voice like silk over steel. "I want a copy of our agreement," she said, arms crossed. He raised an eyebrow. "Don't trust me? Would you?" His lips twitched. Not a smile, just a flicker of intrigue. "Fine, you'll have it by noon. In the meantime, join me in the car." "Where are we going?" "To make your role official," he said. "Mrs. Steele needs a wardrobe, and Dallas has the best tailor west of Manhattan." She hesitated, but followed. Being defiant wouldn't break him. But playing his game, that was how she'd win. The car ride was quiet, tense. Emily stared out the window, ignoring the scent of his cologne beside her, dark, expensive, maddeningly attractive. He didn't speak, didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Jackson Steele didn't demand attention. He commanded it. The boutique they entered was so high-end, it didn't even have a name on the front. Just glass, gold, and an air of exclusivity. A woman with silver hair and sharp red lipstick greeted them like they were royalty. "Mr. Steele," she purred, "always a pleasure." "This is my wife," he said without hesitation. "She needs to be dressed accordingly." Emily stiffened at the word wife. It didn't belong to her. Not really. Not like this. The tailor looked her over with a critical eye, then clapped her hands. "We'll start with the basics. Black, red, silk, lace." "Nothing too revealing," Emily snapped before she could stop herself. Jackson's eyes slid toward her. "On the contrary, everything revealing. She's not to be hidden." The tailor smirked. "Understood." Emily glared at him once they were alone in the fitting room. "You don't get to decide how I present myself," she hissed. He leaned against the wall, arms folded. "This isn't about seduction, Emily. It's about presence, power. You walk into a room looking like fire, people assume you're untouchable. That's what I need." "And what do I get in return?" He stepped closer, voice low. "A year, a clean slate, and the farm your father gambled away." Her breath hitched. "You really think I can play your wife and not go crazy?" "No," he said, eyes darkening. "I think you'll either burn or learn to burn others first." She was shaking when the first dress was zipped up, not from fear, but from something more dangerous, from the heat building in her stomach every time his eyes lingered too long. They left with 10 dresses and silence hanging thick between them. Back at the estate, the contract was waiting for her on the desk in her room. She read every line, every clause. It was all there, 1 year of marriage, no physical expectations unless initiated by her, discretion required in public, image control, financial terms. But one line stopped her cold. Clause 14. The wife agrees to attend the Steel Gala as primary hostess, under full spousal obligations. She stormed to his office. You want me to play house for your elite puppets too? Jackson didn't look up from his laptop. I need appearances maintained. The gala is mandatory. Define spousal obligations. He looked up slowly. You'll wear what I choose. Smile when needed. Stay at my side and... He paused, voice dropping. If asked, act like you belong to me. Her heart slammed. I don't belong to anyone, she whispered. Jackson stood, walking around the desk. He stopped inches from her, heat radiating between them. That's where you're wrong, he said, voice a growl. Right now, Emily Carter, you belong to me on paper, but eventually, you'll beg for it to be real. She slapped the contract against his chest, then turned and walked away, ignoring the way her body trembled, from rage, from confusion, from something she didn't dare name. Behind her, Jackson watched her go, a slow smile curling at his lips. Let the game begin. Emily slammed her bedroom door shut and leaned against it, heart racing like she'd just survived a battlefield. She hated him, hated how calm he always was, how every word out of his mouth was laced with control, and worst of all, she hated how her body betrayed her in his presence. How did a man like Jackson Steele make fury feel so much like fire? She threw the contract onto the vanity and glared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same girl who'd grown up on a dusty farm road. This one wore diamonds, red silk, and the weight of a name that didn't belong to her. The Steel Gala was 3 days away, 3 days to become someone else, 3 days to survive a world of wolves while married to the most dangerous one of all. The next morning, Emily woke to a note slid under her door. Breakfast, East Terrace, 9 a.m. Be on time, J. She rolled her eyes but showed up anyway, wearing jeans and a simple blouse out of spite. Jackson was already seated at the white stone table, sipping coffee like he hadn't shattered her nerves the night before. Nice of you to join me, he said without looking up from his tablet. You could have just texted me. I don't text. I summon. Emily raised a brow and sat across from him, pouring her own coffee. Of course you do. The view from the terrace was breathtaking. Manicured gardens, distant skyline, sunlight casting golden halos over the marble floors. But she couldn't enjoy it, not with the tension coiling between them like a live wire. You've read the contract, he said. Every word. And? I haven't signed it. He looked up now, eyes sharp. Why? Because I want an amendment. His mouth twitched, just a hint of surprise. Go on. You don't own my story, she said. If people ask how we met, I tell the version I choose, not yours. Jackson set down his cup, steepling his fingers. You want to lie? No. I want to protect myself. You're used to power. I'm not. If I'm going to be on your arm, I get to decide how much of my soul I trade. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Accepted. Emily blinked. That easy? I don't micromanage. I manipulate. There's a difference. She shook her head, letting out a humorless laugh. You're unreal. I'm effective. They ate in silence after that, a silence that somehow wasn't entirely hostile, just thick with unspoken things. Later that afternoon, she found herself wandering into the estate's private library, a room full of leather-bound books, silence and shadows. She liked it there. It didn't feel like his space, not entirely. Here she could breathe until he found her. You read? He asked from the doorway. Most of the women you've bought don't. He gave her a look. You're not a purchase. You're a possession. Oh, that's so much better. But she didn't stop him when he walked closer. He reached for a book on the top shelf behind her, brushing against her shoulder as he did. It wasn't an accident. Her breath caught. He held the book out. "Try this." She didn't look at the title. "Trying to impress me with literature now?" "No," he said softly. "Trying to distract you from how much you're starting to like it here." She met his gaze, defiant, but her hand shook slightly as she took the book. He didn't touch her again. Didn't need to. The room was already filled with the tension of what hadn't happened. That night, she couldn't sleep. She found herself standing on the balcony outside her bedroom, the moonlight bathing her bare arms, the wind warm against her skin. And she wasn't surprised when she sensed him there, watching from the shadows of the hallway. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked without turning. "No," he said. He stepped closer, but not enough to touch, just enough to tempt. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "The gala, the dresses, the smile. You don't have to play the part." She turned, surprised. "But if you do," his voice lowered, thick with meaning, "they'll never know what you gave up to stand beside me." Emily's chest tightened, because that was the truth. No one would see the cost. She took a step forward. So did he. They were inches apart now, the night wrapping around them, cloaking their war. "I'm not scared of you," she whispered. "You should be." He didn't kiss her, but his hand brushed her waist, just barely. And then he walked away, leaving her aching, burning, and dangerously curious about what surrender might feel like. Emily didn't move, not even after Jackson disappeared down the hall, leaving only the echo of his presence and the ghost of his fingers on her waist. The heat lingered there, like a brand, long after the touch had gone. She told herself she hated him for the contract, the arrogance, the way he bent her world with a single word. But the truth pulsed somewhere deeper. She wanted him, and that terrified her more than anything. The next morning she woke earlier than usual. Something about the air in the estate had changed, tighter, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. When she stepped into the hallway, she heard voices downstairs, low, masculine, and tense. She crept to the top of the grand staircase and peered down. Jackson was standing in the foyer, speaking with a man in a charcoal suit, older, stern, and sharp-eyed like a hawk. His voice was clipped and judgmental. "You brought her here?" the man said. "You made her your wife? You're playing with fire, Jackson." "I don't play," Jackson replied coolly. "She's a liability. One mistake and the board will rip you apart. She's mine to manage." Emily's stomach twisted. Manage? Like she was a problem to be solved. The older man noticed her then. His gaze snapped up, sharp and appraising. "Well, so this is the girl." Jackson turned to see her standing at the top of the stairs. Something flickered in his eyes, a warning she couldn't decipher. "This is Emily," he said tightly. "My wife." Emily descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "And you are?" "Victor Steele," the man said. "His uncle, acting CEO of Steele Holdings until Jackson takes over officially." Emily reached the bottom, chin high. "You're worried I'll ruin his reputation," Victor smirked. "I don't worry. I eliminate threats." Jackson stepped in. "That's enough." Victor gave her one last cold look before adjusting his cuffs. "Careful, Jackson. The last time you let your guard down for a woman, it nearly cost you everything." Then he left. Emily stood frozen. The silence that followed was suffocating. "What did he mean by that?" she asked softly. Jackson didn't answer right away. He looked past her, jaw clenched. "He meant what he always means. Control is everything, and love is weakness." "Did you love her?" she asked, thinking of the photo in his study. He looked at her now, something raw and dark flickering in his eyes. "Once, and it destroyed us both." She swallowed hard. "I'm not her." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You're more dangerous." She felt it then, The shift. The way he looked at her had changed, like he didn't know whether to fight her or fall into her. And for the first time, she didn't know which one she wanted either. That night, the dress arrived for the gala. It was black, sleek, backless, designed to cling to every inch of her like a second skin. Emily stared at it for a long time before finally slipping it on. She didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. But maybe that was the point. When she descended the staircase just before the car arrived, Jackson was waiting in a dark suit, black on black. His tie was silk, his cufflinks understated, his expression unreadable. Until he saw her. His eyes moved over her slowly, like a storm building behind glass. "You're late," he said, but his voice was lower, rougher. "You're staring," she countered, walking past him. "I paid for the dress. I'm allowed to admire my investment." She turned to face him, chin high. "Careful. You sound almost enchanted." He smirked, but there was no amusement in it, just hunger. "You have no idea what you do to me," he said, voice tight with restraint. Her breath caught, and then he offered his arm. She hesitated, then took it. The ride to the gala was quiet, but the air inside the car crackled. She could feel his gaze on her thigh, her collarbone, the curve of her neck. But he didn't touch her. Not yet. When they arrived, flashes exploded from cameras, voices shouting his name. Jackson held her close, his hand firm at her waist. She smiled, she played the part, but inside, she burned. And when his hand brushed the small of her back, just once, she knew the real performance hadn't even begun. The moment they stepped inside the ballroom, Emily felt like she'd been dropped into another world, one carved from crystal and ice, drenched in wealth and the kind of ruthless glamour she'd only ever seen in magazines. Towering chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, casting diamonds across polished marble floors. Laughter clinked in champagne glasses. Power whispered between suits and silk gowns, and every eye turned toward them. Jackson didn't flinch. His hand remained firmly at her waist, his posture a masterclass in control. Emily forced herself to breathe. "You're the main event," he said quietly, leaning into her ear. His breath grazed her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. "Smile like you own the room." "I don't," she whispered back. "You own me tonight. That's enough." The words were dangerous. They curled inside her, settling somewhere too close to her heart. They moved together, synchronized, magnetic, the cold billionaire and the mystery bride no one could place. She caught snippets of whispers as they passed. "She's too young. Who is she? There's no way she's from our circle." And then, he never looked at Lydia like that. Emily's stomach twisted. Lydia, the ghost in the portrait, the woman with the crack through her heart. She turned toward Jackson, her voice low and even. "They're comparing me to her." "They always will," he replied, eyes scanning the room. "But they don't matter. Do you miss her?" He paused, just long enough for her to feel it. "I miss who I thought she was." It wasn't a real answer, but it was more than she expected. He introduced her to men with cold smiles and eyes like knives, women with calculated hugs and air kisses that stung. Everyone was watching her, evaluating, calculating, waiting for a crack. So she smiled. She played her role. Until she met her, tall, blonde, impossibly elegant, and walking straight toward Jackson like she belonged by his side. "Jackson," the woman said, her voice dripping with silk and venom. "You didn't tell me you'd brought your new project." "Vanessa," Jackson greeted coolly. "Always a pleasure." Vanessa turned to Emily, smile sharp. "So this is the wife. She's quaint." Emily extended her hand. "I'm Emily. And you are?" Vanessa laughed. "His last almost fiancé. Don't worry, darling. You're not the first woman he's tried to save. Emily's blood ran cold, but she smiled. And you're not the first to fail to keep him. Jackson's jaw tensed. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. The silence stretched. Then Jackson's hand found Emily's lower back again, not possessively this time, but almost protectively. "Excuse us," he said. He guided Emily away, toward a quiet alcove near the grand piano, his touch firm but not forceful. "What was that?" he asked once they were alone. "I protected your reputation," she said flatly. "Isn't that what I'm here for?" His eyes searched hers. "You didn't have to go toe-to-toe with her." "Yes, I did," she replied, "because I may not be from this world, but I refuse to be swallowed by it." Something shifted in his face. Respect, maybe. Or something more dangerous. Desire. He took a step closer. "You're not afraid of them," he said. "No," she whispered. "And you're not afraid of me." She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure it was true anymore. His hand rose, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was deliberate, slow. Her breath hitched. "You're fire," he murmured. "I keep trying to control you, and all you do is burn hotter." Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Then stop trying to control me." His lips were inches from hers now. "I can't." And just when she thought he might kiss her, he didn't. Instead, he pulled back, controlled again, cold. "Let's finish the evening," he said. "You've already made a lasting impression." And just like that, the heat between them vanished, leaving Emily standing in a room full of lies with a man who could own everything except his own heart. They didn't speak in the car on the way back from the gala. Emily sat rigid, arms crossed over her chest, staring out the window as the Dallas skyline blurred into darkness. Jackson sat beside her, perfectly composed, fingers clasped over his knee, jaw locked in that familiar, maddening stillness. She could still feel the heat of his near kiss, the way he'd leaned in, the way her heart had nearly exploded. And then, nothing. No kiss, no touch. Just cold restraint, as if he'd punished himself for even considering wanting her. By the time they arrived at the estate, she didn't wait for him. She stormed ahead, heels clicking on marble, the silence between them like thunder in her chest. She made it halfway up the stairs before she heard his voice. "Emily!" She froze, but didn't turn. "I didn't kiss you," he said, voice low, "because if I had, I wouldn't have stopped." She turned then, slowly. He stood at the bottom of the stairs, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie hanging loose. Still dangerous, still in control, but something in his eyes had shifted. They weren't just cold anymore. They were torn. "I'm not a man who dabbles," he continued. "I take, I consume, and you—" He exhaled sharply. "You'd burn." She walked down the stairs toward him, one step at a time, her pulse drumming louder with every inch she closed between them. "Then maybe," she said softly, "I want to burn." His hands twitched at his sides, but again, he didn't move. Coward. Or worse, protector. "You think I'm weak?" she asked, standing right in front of him now, so close she could feel the heat radiating off his body. "You think I can't handle you?" "I think," he said, voice tight, "that if I touch you the way I want to, you'll never look at me the same again." She stared up at him, breathing hard. "Try me." And then she did something reckless. She kissed him. Her hands gripped his shirt, pulling him down, her mouth crashing into his like a fuse finally lit. And for a moment, just a breath, he didn't kiss her back. But then he did, with everything he'd been holding back, with the kind of hunger that felt like punishment and pleasure at once. His hands were everywhere, tangled in her hair, gripping her waist, pressing her against the wall as if she were the only thing holding him together. It wasn't sweet. It was possession, and she let it happen. because she wanted to know what it felt like to be wanted that desperately, even if it was wrong, even if it was dangerous, even if it could ruin them both. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing like they'd run miles. His forehead rested against hers. His voice was hoarse. "This changes everything." She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her mind was still reeling, her body still humming. Then his phone buzzed. He stepped back, jaw clenched, and glanced at the screen. Everything about him went still. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes were like glass again, the mask back in place. "I need to leave town, tonight." "What?" She blinked. "Why? What happened?" He looked at her, hesitation flickering for half a second. Then, "It's business. Don't lie to me." "I'm not," he said. "But I can't tell you more. Not yet." She crossed her arms. "So that's it? You kiss me like that, and then vanish into the night? This isn't about us, isn't it?" He stepped closer again, and for a moment she thought he might take her with him, but instead he said, "Don't open the study while I'm gone, and don't talk to anyone from the press. Jackson, 3 days, I'll be back." Then he was gone, and Emily was left alone in a house full of shadows, with lips that still remembered his kiss, and a heart that suddenly, terrifyingly, wanted more. The first 12 hours passed in silence. Emily wandered the estate like a ghost, her thoughts echoing louder than her footsteps. She replayed the kiss 1,000 times, every gasp, every desperate pull, the way Jackson had consumed her like she was the only oxygen in a world on fire. And then he was gone. No word, no call, just a warning, "Don't open the study," which, of course, made her want to open it even more. By the second day, the silence had become unbearable. The staff avoided her eyes, and the air in the house felt off, as if the very walls were hiding something. By the third morning, curiosity was no longer a whisper, it was a roar. She found herself outside the study door before she even realized she'd walked there. The steel keypad glared at her, locked, just like the first time. But Jackson had underestimated her. He hadn't changed the code. She remembered watching him input it weeks ago, a small detail she'd filed away without thinking. J721. She pressed the numbers. The door clicked. It opened. The room was darker than before, the curtains drawn, the air stale, as if no one had stepped inside since the last confession they'd shared. But it wasn't the books that caught her eye this time. It was the drawer in his desk, half open. Inside, she found files, dozens of them, names, faces, documents with red stamps that read "confidential" and "sealed." She shouldn't look. She knew that. But one folder had her name on it. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Photos. Of her. From before they met. Working at the diner near the college, walking home at night, even a shot of her at her mother's grave. Her blood ran cold. He'd been watching her long before her father's death, long before the proposal. She staggered back, heart racing. What the hell was this? What kind of man prepared a marriage? The house phone rang, startling her. She rushed to answer it. "Emily!" It was Jackson's voice, tight, urgent. "Where are you?" she snapped. "Why the hell are there surveillance photos of me in your study?" Silence. Then, "You opened the door." "You lied to me," she hissed. "You knew who I was before you even stepped onto that porch. This wasn't a business arrangement, it was a setup." "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was, Jackson, right now." A long pause, then his voice changed, low, cold, exposed. "I found out about your father's debt 6 months ago. I knew he couldn't pay, and I knew he had a daughter." He sighed. "At first, yes, it was strategy. You were leverage." Her chest tightened. "But then I saw you," he continued. "Not just in the photos. I watched you. How you fought for him. How you didn't break, even when your world was collapsing. And I realized something terrifying. What? You weren't leverage anymore, he said. You were a risk, because you made me want something I swore I'd never want again. Emily gripped the edge of the table, torn between fury and something far more dangerous, understanding. You planned every move, she whispered. I tried to control it, he said. But then you kissed me, and I knew I was already yours. Tears burned her eyes. You can't manipulate someone into falling for you and call it love. I'm not asking you to love me, he said. I'm asking you to understand why I couldn't walk away from you. She stood in the wreckage of the study, his secrets all around her, and made her choice. I'm leaving. What? You don't get to control me anymore, Jackson. Not with contracts, not with secrets, not with half-truths dressed as confessions. Emily. She hung up, packed a bag, and by sunset she was gone. But she didn't go far, because as much as she wanted to run, she needed him to chase her. The motel room smelled like dust and faded dreams. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her small bag by the door, the window cracked open to let in the thick Texas heat. She hadn't cried, not when she left. Not during the 2-hour drive to the nowhere town on the edge of nowhere. But her chest ached with something heavier than tears. He had watched her, planned her, wanted her, and yet when he spoke to her, it was like he was afraid. Not of her fury, but of how deeply she had gotten under his skin. The knock came just after midnight. She didn't move. Another knock, firmer, slower, measured like the man himself. She opened the door without a word. Jackson stood there, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, tie loose, hair a mess. Not the cold, polished billionaire she'd married, but the man beneath, the one who had kissed her like she was oxygen and looked at her like she was fire. I told you I'd find you, he said quietly. She stepped aside. He walked in slowly like a man entering sacred ground and turned to face her. You didn't make it hard. She crossed her arms. I didn't want to disappear. I wanted you to follow. I deserved that, he said, voice hoarse. She met his eyes. You deserved worse. He nodded. I planned everything. I tracked your life like a blueprint. I told myself it was just strategy, but I lied. I wanted to control you because I couldn't control what I felt. You turned my life into a game, she whispered. You used my desperation. Yes, he said, stepping closer. And I regret it every second I breathe. Her voice cracked. I don't want your regret, Jackson. I want the truth. He exhaled hard. The truth is, I fell in love with you the moment you looked me in the eye and told me I couldn't own you. Silence filled the room like thunder. You made me remember what pain feels like, he continued. What hope feels like. You ripped open everything I buried with Lydia, and I hated you for it, until I didn't. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. You don't know how to love, Jackson. He took another step. Teach me. Her voice broke. You scared me. I scare myself. He reached for her, slow, careful, reverent, and when she didn't pull away, his hands cupped her face, thumbs catching the tears. I don't want to be your captor anymore, he whispered. I want to be your choice. She looked up at him, her heart in pieces. Then prove it. He dropped to one knee. No ring, no theatrics, just raw, unguarded truth. I was your husband by force, he said. Let me earn the right to be your partner, your equal, your home. She let out a broken laugh through the tears. You're a bastard. He smiled faintly. Yes, but I'm your bastard. She sank to the floor in front of him, their foreheads touching, hands tangled, the storm between them finally still. I hate that I love you, she whispered. Then we're even, he said, because I love that you hate me. She kissed him. This time there was no rage, no war, only release, only surrender. And when they lay tangled in that narrow motel bed, skin against skin, heart against heart, it wasn't about contracts or power or past wounds. It was about a choice, finally mutual. Weeks later, the Carter farm was in her name. No strings, no debt, just hers. Emily didn't move back. She stayed in Dallas, but not in the estate, not the old house built on coldness and secrets. They bought a new one, smaller, warmer. And in the mornings, when she woke with Jackson's arms around her, she knew she had survived the fire and taught the devil how to love. 1 year later, the morning sun poured through the kitchen windows, golden and soft, casting a gentle light over the quiet home just outside Dallas. Emily stood barefoot on the cool hardwood floor, a mug of black coffee in her hands, wearing nothing but one of Jackson's white dress shirts. It hung loose over her curves, smelling like him, dark, warm, safe. She watched him from across the room. He was by the sink, shirtless, hair damp from the shower, slicing strawberries for breakfast with the same precision he once used to negotiate billion-dollar deals. But here, in their modest kitchen, he was just Jackson. The man who burned for her, bled for her, chose her. He looked up and caught her staring. "You're doing it again," he said. She smiled. "What?" "Looking at me like I'm a miracle." She walked toward him slowly. "Because you are." He set down the knife and pulled her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You know," he murmured, voice rough with affection, "I used to think I'd never feel this. Not again. Not after what I lost. And now?" He cupped her face gently, the edge long gone from his touch. "Now I know love isn't about control. It's about surrender. You taught me that." She laughed softly, resting her forehead against his. "You were the most arrogant, cold, infuriating man I'd ever met. And you still married me." "Under duress," she teased. He chuckled. "And now?" "Now," her voice softened, "I'd marry you 100 times over, if it meant this." Jackson leaned down and kissed her, slow, unhurried, full of everything he once believed he didn't deserve. When they pulled apart, he looked into her eyes. "You're not my possession, Emily. You're my salvation." And for the first time in a long, chaotic journey, the past no longer mattered, because together they had rewritten everything. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more stories like this. And don't forget to leave a like. It helps our channel grow and reach more people who love these kinds of emotional, passionate tales. The next story is already on your screen, full of drama and romance that will move your heart once again. Stay with me, and let's dive into this new journey together. See you soon, my dear friends. Catch you in the next video.